Pay attention to Jessica Callaher, 27 years old, buying a bag of dog food at Walmart at 1:45 in the morning. She has less than 5 hours left to live. Because Crispin Harmel, 37, a stalker hiding in plain sight, is tracking her every move from inside that very store. On this day, Jessica plans to feed her dogs and rest to prepare for her next shift as she works toward her master's degree. On this day, Crispin decides to destroy it all. This is the story of one horrifying night that revealed society's indifference and changed everything.
Hello?
Park 911, what's happening?
Please, I need emergency to the Walmart, 1431, 183. My friend is in her car, and she I don't know, I think she passed out. She totally ran. We're right by the Little Caesars.
Jessica Callaher wasn't just surviving in Austin, Texas. She was building something. The Texas State University graduate worked 2 jobs simultaneously: substitute teaching during school hours and cashier shifts at a local grocery store on evenings and weekends. Every dollar she earned went toward 2 dreams: a master's degree in education and finally clearing the student loans that shadowed her bank account. What made Jessica special wasn't her ambition alone. It was her unshakable optimism. Her family remembers a quote she once shared: "Someday, everything will make perfect sense. Laugh at the confusion, smile through the tears, and keep reminding yourself that everything happens for a reason." She was the friend who showed up, the cousin who listened, the woman who believed better days were coming. Jessica had no idea that a random stranger would soon steal every one of those better days from her. The holiday started perfectly. Jessica spent the afternoon with her cousin and best friend Melanie, along with several others from their close circle. The Texas heat hit 95 degrees, so the group cooled off in a backyard pool, laughing and soaking up the last unofficial day of summer. They grilled burgers and hot dogs, the smoke mixing with chlorine and sunscreen in the air. By evening, they moved the party to a local restaurant. Jessica was driving everyone home that night. She had work the next morning at 7 o'clock. Money was tight, as always, so she nursed just 2 drinks over several hours while her friends enjoyed themselves. After the restaurant closed around 11:30, the group relocated to a nearby bar for pool and conversation. Just past midnight, Jessica began her shuttle service, dropping friends at their apartments one by one. At 1 o'clock in the morning, Melanie, the last passenger, offered Jessica her couch for the night. "Just stay here," she urged. "You'll be more comfortable." But Jessica declined with a smile. She needed to wake up fresh for work. Plus, her dogs were waiting, and she was completely out of dog food. She hugged Melanie goodbye and drove toward the 24-hour Walmart across town. It was a routine errand, a simple stop. Nothing about the moment suggested danger. Hours passed. Dawn broke over Austin. People across the city stirred, brewing coffee and preparing for Tuesday routines. Melanie's phone rang. A coworker from the grocery store was calling. Jessica hadn't shown up for her 7 o'clock shift. Melanie's stomach dropped. Jessica never called in sick. She certainly never just vanished without explanation. Melanie immediately started making calls. Every conversation ended the same way. No one had heard from Jessica since the night before. Jessica shared an apartment with Melanie's brother John, who happened to work as a police officer. He'd started his own shift at 5 that morning and assumed Jessica was still asleep when he left. Now, hearing the concern in his sister's voice, John rushed home. One of Jessica's dogs greeted him at the door, visibly distressed. The apartment looked untouched. Her bed was made. Nothing suggested she'd come home at all. John grabbed his phone and called his colleagues immediately. Within minutes, they pinged Jessica's cell phone location. The signal bounced from the intersection of U.S. Highway 183 and Walton Way in Cedar Park, a busy commercial area filled with restaurants, gas stations, and shopping centers. Not isolated, not hidden, right out in the open. Melanie and her boyfriend Sergey raced to the location. They spotted Jessica's white Kia almost immediately, parked outside a Little Caesars pizza restaurant. Relief flooded through them for half a second. Then they got closer. A horrible smell hit them thick, unmistakable, wrong. Even with the windows rolled up, the stench permeated the air around the vehicle. It was 90 degrees outside. The car had been baking in the sun. Melanie peered through the window. Jessica was inside, slumped in the driver's seat, which had been pushed all the way back, too far back for someone her height to reach the pedals. She wasn't moving. Through the glass, they could see what appeared to be biological matter smeared across the interior. The car was unlocked. Sergei pulled the door open, and the smell became overwhelming. Melanie touched Jessica's head gently, desperately hoping to wake her. No response. Jessica's skin was bright red from severe sunburn. Marks covered her body. Her hair was soaked with sweat. Sergei dialed 911.
Hello? Peter Park 911, what's happening? 911, please. I need emergency to the Walmart. 1431, 183. My friend is in her car. And she I don't know, I think she passed out. She's totally ran. We're right by the Little Caesars.
The medical examiner's findings were devastating. Jessica Kelleher had been taken from this world. A mark circled her neck. Small hemorrhages dotted her eyes, face, and neck, telltale signs of asphyxiation. Bruises and scratches covered her arms, legs, and torso. The evidence painted a horrific picture. Jessica had been physically violated and choked not once, but twice. The first attack involved some type of cloth, possibly the tie from her white sundress, which she'd been wearing over her bathing suit. The second attack was manual, someone's hands crushing her throat. Defensive wounds on her neck showed she'd clawed desperately at her attacker, trying to pry their grip away. Many of those scratches were self-inflicted as she fought to breathe. Her wallet, credit cards, and car keys were missing. But investigators recovered her cell phone for analysis. They began canvassing the area immediately. This was a public space, surrounded by businesses with security cameras. Someone had to have seen something. A restaurant worker provided the first crucial timeline. She'd arrived for her early shift and noticed Jessica alive in the car. But what she described made investigators' blood run cold. Jessica was crawling around unclothed inside the vehicle, apparently struggling to put her bathing suit on. The worker saw her again later, this time wearing the white dress, sitting outside the car and playing with her hair in an unfocused, detached manner. The third and final time the worker glanced over, Jessica was back inside the car, talking to herself and making strange hand gestures. Other witnesses came forward with similar accounts. They'd seen Jessica appearing confused and lethargic. Her movements were erratic. Her behavior was obviously abnormal. Yet not a single person approached her. Not one person called 911. Not one person asked if she needed help. They watched a young woman clearly in distress, saw her deteriorating in real time, and did nothing. Think about that for a moment. If you saw someone acting this way in a parking lot without clothes, confused, clearly not okay, would you just keep walking? Would you tell yourself it wasn't your business? Or would you pick up the phone and call for help? Investigators knew Jessica had planned to buy dog food. A massive bag sat in her back seat. The 24-hour Walmart directly across from where her car was found seemed like the obvious location. Security footage confirmed it. At 1:45 in the morning, Jessica's Kia pulled into the parking lot. She entered the store alone, wearing her white sundress, red baseball cap, and carrying her purse. The cameras captured everything. Jessica moved through the aisles with purpose. No stumbling, no confusion, no signs of intoxication or distress. She walked directly to the pet supplies section, selected a large bag of dog food, and proceeded to the checkout. She didn't speak to anyone. No one appeared to be watching or following her. She paid and left the store. One of the employees standing near the exit doors watched her go, a routine glance that meant nothing at the time. But then, something changed. The tapes revealed a tall man in a brown shirt and baseball cap suddenly moving toward the exit just seconds behind Jessica. He hadn't been following her inside the store. He'd arrived separately, parking his small red pickup truck in the lot several minutes before Jessica. He'd used the restroom inside Walmart. When he exited the restroom, Jessica happened to be ahead of him, carrying the dog food toward the doors. Now, captured on camera, he was walking behind her, fast. His pace quickened with each step. Jessica carried the heavy bag of dog food across the parking lot to her Kia. The man was roughly 20 seconds behind her, closing the distance. Frustratingly, her car was parked directly behind a large tree that completely blocked the camera's view. A second camera pointed toward that area, but the image quality was terrible, grainy, dark, impossible to see details. Still, investigators could make out enough. The man walked right up to Jessica's car. Then he disappeared. He didn't emerge. He didn't walk back into view. His red pickup truck remained parked where he'd left it. Approximately 2 minutes later, Jessica's Kia pulled out of the parking spot and drove toward the exit. 2 minutes. That's how long it took for everything in Jessica Callagher's life to change forever. The Walmart across the street had cameras that overlooked the Little Caesars parking lot. Those cameras showed Jessica's car pulling in and parking at exactly 2 o'clock in the morning. The driver's door opened. A figure got out, the same man in the brown shirt. Investigators watched as he crossed the street back into the Walmart parking lot, walked directly to his red pickup truck, and drove away. Jessica's car never moved again. From 2 o'clock until she was found hours later, the Kia sat in that spot. But the timeline created a disturbing puzzle. At 3:05 in the morning, 25 minutes after her car stopped moving, Jessica's debit card was used at an Exxon gas station 3 miles away. Security footage showed the man in the brown shirt swiping the card. Jessica wasn't with him. She remained in the car, yet multiple witnesses reported seeing her alive hours after he'd left her. She was crawling unclothed in her car, sitting outside, talking to herself. How was this possible? Melanie insisted Jessica had been completely sober when they parted ways. Jessica didn't use drugs. She barely drank. The toxicology report confirmed this. No alcohol, no drugs, no medication whatsoever in her system. So what explained her bizarre behavior in those final hours? What caused a healthy, coherent young woman to deteriorate so rapidly? Investigators released portions of the surveillance footage to the media along with a description of the red pickup truck. They needed the public's help identifying this man. Within days, a woman named Leslie called the police. She recognized the truck immediately. It belonged to her fiance's best friend, a man named Crispin Harmel, 37 years old. Leslie explained that Crispin was supposed to visit their apartment the morning Jessica was found to repay money he owed them. He never showed up. That struck her as odd. The timing felt wrong. She couldn't shake a terrible feeling in her gut. Crispin was like family to them. Making this call felt like a betrayal. But a young woman was dead, and Leslie knew the right thing to do. Investigators ran Crispin's name through their system immediately. 3 weeks earlier, he'd been pulled over for driving with an expired registration. The officer's body camera footage showed Crispin behind the wheel of the same red pickup truck, wearing an identical baseball cap. This was their man. 5 days after Jessica's body was found, police knocked on Crispin's door. The truck sat in his driveway, but something was different. Parts that had been silver were now painted black. Crispin had altered the vehicle's appearance. When detectives questioned him, Crispin didn't seem surprised. He admitted knowing Jessica. He claimed they'd arranged to meet through an adult encounter website. According to Crispin, they'd messaged each other and agreed to meet at Walmart between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning. They drove to a park in her car, had a consensual encounter, and then she drove him back. She mentioned he seemed stressed about money, so she generously gave him her debit card and wrote the PIN number on his hand. When he learned she'd died, he panicked. He threw away her card and repainted his truck because he didn't want anyone thinking he was involved. The detectives listened to this story without expression. They already knew it was a lie. The surveillance footage told a completely different story. Crispin and Jessica arrived at Walmart well after 1 o'clock in the morning, not between midnight and 1, as he claimed. They didn't interact inside the store. They didn't acknowledge each other. Jessica's behavior showed she was there for one purpose only: buying dog food. She wasn't meeting anyone. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She walked in, made her purchase, and left. Crispin followed her. Investigators examined Jessica's phone, computer, and online activity thoroughly. There was zero evidence she'd ever visited the website Crispin mentioned. No messages between them, no emails, no communication whatsoever. They were complete strangers. Melanie confirmed Jessica would never meet someone she didn't know at that hour without telling friends exactly where she was going and who she was meeting. Jessica was careful, smart, responsible, but what the evidence did show was chilling.
I remember seeing like a lights flash or whatever, headlights or whatever.
Just hours after Jessica was found dead, Crispin had been searching her name online, reading articles, looking at her photographs. The detectives confronted Crispin with the truth from the cameras. The moment they mentioned the surveillance footage, Crispin asked for a lawyer and went silent. They had their killer, but they still couldn't explain how Jessica survived for hours after Crispin left her in that parking lot. Police charged Crispin with tampering with evidence, throwing away Jessica's debit card, and altering his truck. In May of 2010, after pleading guilty, he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. But the murder charge remained open. Investigators needed to solve the mystery of what happened in that car. They needed to understand the medical timeline. Why was Jessica alive, crawling, moving, breathing, so long after being attacked? Finally, investigators found an article written by a professor at Indiana University School of Medicine. It discussed a phenomenon called delayed death due to asphyxiation. When someone is choked severely enough to lose consciousness, the damage doesn't end when the attacker releases pressure. The brain has been deprived of oxygen. Cells die. Swelling begins. The victim may appear dead but can actually survive for several hours in a severely brain-damaged state before their body finally shuts down. This explained everything.
An expert on strangulation testified in a Williamson County murder trial today. The doctor testified that he agrees with the medical examiner's findings that Jessica Kaler died as a result of strangulation. Crispin Harmel is accused of killing the 27-year-old.
Jessica had been attacked twice, once with cloth, once manually. Crispin thought he'd ended her life. She appeared lifeless, but she was unconscious, not dead. When she regained some level of awareness, her brain was catastrophically damaged. She couldn't think clearly, couldn't recognize danger, couldn't call for help or use her phone. She was trapped in a confused, dying state. Combined with heat stroke from sitting in a car under the blazing Texas sun for hours, her fate was sealed.
So in this case, I think we have two explanations as to why Jessica's behavior was abnormal. One, brain damage from strangulation, and number two, heat.
Dr. Bill Smock, an expert in forensic medicine, explained the process. You go unconscious first because your brain isn't getting enough oxygenated blood. Then you may have a seizure. At a minimum of 15 seconds, your brain cells start dying. The first thing you lose is control of your bladder. Then you lose control of your bodily functions. The last part of our brain to die is our brainstem, the part that controls breathing and heartbeat. But above that in the brain are things like personality and memory. Jessica's erratic behavior, the biological evidence in the car, her inability to seek help, it all made horrible, tragic sense. And still, witnesses saw her in this condition and did nothing. Let that sink in. Multiple people watched a young woman clearly suffering, clearly not in control of herself, and walked away. How many times do we see something concerning and tell ourselves it's not our problem? How many opportunities to save a life do we miss because we don't want to get involved? Share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever witnessed someone in distress? Did you help or did you hesitate? What would you do if you saw someone like Jessica today? In May of 2013, nearly 4 years after Jessica's murder, Crispin Harmel was indicted for capital murder. He pleaded not guilty. The trial began, and expert witnesses testified about asphyxiation. The surveillance footage was shown in court, frame by frame. Crispin's ex-girlfriend testified that he'd lied to her repeatedly after Jessica's death, claiming his apartment burned down and his truck broke down, when in reality, police had seized both his phone and vehicle as evidence. The defense argued there was no DNA linking Crispin to Jessica. They pointed out that if she'd been attacked, her fingernails should have contained the perpetrator's DNA. But experts explained that extreme heat and humidity degrade DNA rapidly. Given that Jessica's body had been exposed to 90-degree temperatures for hours, the absence of DNA evidence wasn't surprising at all. Then, disaster struck. The trial ended in a mistrial. Prosecutors were accused of withholding evidence. Everything ground to a halt. The district attorney, Jana Duty, was later sent to jail for violating a gag order and sanctioned by the State Bar of Texas for professional misconduct. Years later, she would pass away after taking her own life. Jessica's case seemed cursed. In the spring of 2018, nearly 9 years after Jessica's murder, Crispin's second trial began. The jury watched his interrogation videos. They saw him lie. They saw detectives dismantle his story piece by piece. Sergeant Bond, who'd investigated the case, testified about every inconsistency, Jessica's driver's seat was pushed all the way back. Her feet couldn't reach the pedals in that position. Crispin claimed she drove them to the park and back, but that was physically impossible. He claimed she started the car as he walked away, but surveillance showed the headlights never turned on. Her keys were never found. The prosecution presented the surveillance footage that caught everything. The defense tried to argue that Crispin and Jessica were planning to meet, so it made sense they didn't look for each other inside Walmart. They planned to meet at her car. But the footage showed the opposite. Jessica had no idea Crispin existed. She was buying dog food. He was following her. This time, the jury found Crispin Harmel guilty of capital murder. Because prosecutors didn't seek the death penalty, he was automatically sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Found a man guilty of killing a woman in Cedar Park in 2009. Crispin Harmel is convicted of kidnapping, raping, and strangling her. The judge sentenced Harmel to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
In 2020, he appealed the conviction. The appeal was denied. He remains locked up exactly where he belongs. Jessica had spent a beautiful Labor Day with people she loved. She'd laughed in a pool, eaten good food, played pool with friends, and drove everyone home safely. When she walked across that Walmart parking lot carrying dog food at 1:45 in the morning, she was thinking about her dogs, her bed, and her shift the next morning. Her master's degree was within reach. A permanent teaching position was on the horizon. Student loans would eventually be paid. Life was hard, but getting better. All of it was stolen in 2 minutes. Jessica's cousin John said he hoped Crispin's conviction would bring relief, but it didn't. Nothing changed. Crispin still gets to wake up every morning. Jessica doesn't. Her father thinks about the wedding he'll never attend, the grandchildren he'll never meet. She would have been a great mother, he said. I miss her a lot. Melanie says some days are easier than others, but good memories are forever tainted by what she saw in that parking lot, her best friend and cousin dying alone while strangers watched and did nothing. Jessica Callaher deserved so much more. She deserved the life she was building. She deserved someone to notice she was in trouble and call for help. She deserved justice that didn't take 9 years. Most of all, she deserved to come home that night, feed her dogs, and wake up the next morning for work. Instead, she became another cautionary tale about the evil that hides in plain sight and the bystanders who see suffering and turn away. What do you think? Could this tragedy have been prevented if just one person had called 911 when they saw Jessica in distress? Have you ever been that person who intervened or the person who didn't? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might encourage someone else to act the next time they see something wrong, because the next time, it could save a life.